Well, it's been a week since the tragic deaths of 21 teenagers at Enyobeni Tavern in East London in the Eastern Cape, and the investigation is still underway. Authorities have ruled out a stampede as a possible cause and say autopsies will reveal what really happened. But it's suspected the deaths could be linked to poisoning. The Liquor Board in the Eastern Cape has since opened criminal charges against the tavern owner and shut down the tavern. This week, a night vigil was held in honor of the teens with a mass funeral set for next week. We're going to spend this hour looking at this tragic event. We'll be speaking to the Liquor Traders Association's Lakin Timane, who joins me in studio, in fact, and our reporters Nceban Tlanganiso in Gqeberha and Aviwe Mtila, who is out in East London. Let's start with you, Nceba, just reflecting on the week that was. It's been a confusing week, I think, for many South Africans, many people demanding answers, but the answers not forthcoming, at least not at the pace at which many people would want to have them come through. 21 young people dead, aged between 13 and 17. Take me through the official DOM and their answers as to what happened. I believe you've gotten some insights, firstly from police. What are police saying about what they know at this point?
Thank you so much, Tulas. Good afternoon to you, and also good afternoon to our viewers as well. Yes, indeed, this has been a very hectic, busy week. It's, in East London, in Scenery Park, I've never seen a story that is like this in my entire life of being a journalist. Since Sunday morning, let me just take you back a bit. I was in East London, and I was supposed to cover an ANC program where Chairperson Gwede Mandashe was supposed to address this conference here in the Eastern Cape in Fort Hare. And early hours of the morning, I got this call. It rang twice. It rang for the first time, and I ignored it. That time was 5 o'clock in the morning. And it rang for a second time. I said, this must be very serious. I looked at it and I said, this person who is calling me is one of these sources, most reliable sources, highly placed. And then he said to me, very short message, Nceba, there's a serious incident that have just happened here in East London where 17 people already died and the rest of them are lying in hospital. I couldn't resist. I jumped straight to the shower, got ready, shoot to the scene. Just bear in mind that Scenery Park, it's not an area that that I know very well. It's one of those areas you pass on the highways, and I know that there's a place called Scenery Park. I've never been there. So he said, I don't even know the place, but just get in there and look for a place, this tavern. Everybody, definitely, most people there will know. As I was driving in Scenery Park, I met a group of 10 women. They were on their pajamas, others they were in their gowns. They are in a hurry. I stopped and I asked these ladies, please help me. I'm looking for a tavern where this tragedy happened. And then said, please, Buti, give us a lift. We're rushing there. Our kids must be there too. And then I was like, I can't give you, I don't have space. I've got equipment at the back seat. Sorry, I can't help. And I mean, I had only space of 2 people. I mean, if I would have given 2, what about the rest? Anyway, I left them behind. They gave me directions and I went there. Arriving on the scene, Tulas, let me draw you a picture. There was no space to park the car. There were cars all over the place. I had to park a car at a distance, ran with the equipment to the direction where everybody was leading to. I saw this crowd, people fuming, women shouting, first thing that caught my attention is the old lady who was screaming, shouting, a granny looking for stones to throw at the police, looking for the answers. As you said in your intro, that everybody throughout this week has been looking for answers. This old lady, this granny, was shouting at the police, wanting to throw stones at them and seeking for the answer that me and I were still looking for. Anyway, I had to get right up there to see for myself first and also to get the police. It was difficult to go through this crowd. People were in tears. It was just that atmosphere. And, you know, eventually I got to the front. And I saw the police. They were busy on the crime scene, forensic, police, politicians. They also arrived. It was just a chaotic situation. And the first person that I had to speak to, it was Brigadier Kinana. And then, because I wanted to first get a confirmation from the police of what happened and all of that. Well, eventually Brigadier Kinana came along and he took me through, and then he gave me the interview that as the police, they are here at the crime scene. They got this call early hours of the morning, the incident that happened. And they are still trying to figure it out of what happened. And without even saying much, let's just throw to that bite and hear what Brigadier Kinana have said on that Sunday morning.
The circumstances surrounding this particular incident are not known at this stage. However, our detectives, as you can hear the noise around here, our detectives are busy combing the place to try and establish what could have happened over the night. We are investigating the case. We do not want to make any speculations at this stage. We must allow the investigation to continue so that at the end of the day, we are able to establish exactly what may have happened.
Naba, as you were taking us through your reporter notebook and just taking us back, I mean, I couldn't help but just be silent for a moment. And I think, like Intimane also joining me in studio here, there was that silence that fell on all of us because of the meticulous nature with which you were recounting these experiences. And you are a seasoned, camera person who will have witnessed a whole lot of devastating and shocking scenes. And the way you describe that, I imagine, and also I gather that this must be one of the most tragic that you have ever covered. So we now have the other members of our panel that will be joining the conversation as well. Palisa Mokoane is from Soul City Institute, will join us shortly, as well as Lakinti Mane, as I say, who is from the National Liquor Traders Association. They will have their own insights. And I also see that we have Aviwe Mtila as well for his own perspective. But before I bring in Aviwe, Naba, let me stick with you for a moment. So there have been the call for answers has tended to, fluctuate and oscillate between police officers, government for the enforcement of trading regulations, which we'll discuss with Lakinti Mane in a moment. But particularly, there was this march that was held by young people in that area a few days ago, demanding answers as to the policing of it all. The video shows a large crowd that had gathered there. And I imagine that in an ordinary situation, police would have some kind of an interest to enforce law and order to ensure that even if it's all above board and it's revelry as should be allowed, people do adhere to the rules and there aren't any scenes that interfere with people's enjoyment there. What have you gathered around police's, accepting that police can't police everywhere, every space? What did the police minister, for instance, say about some of the criticisms and some of the questions that are targeted at police themselves?
Well, Tulas, people of Scenery Park, you talk of from young to old, men, women, everyone actually has been, eagerly waiting and, frustrated and want answers. And they've been seeking these answers in such a way that there's been these marches that have been taking place in Scenery Park. This incident happened on Sunday, and then on Monday we started seeing marches, taking place in Scenery Park. There was a mass meeting that took place at, I can't even say it's a sports field because there are no even facilities in the area. That's a talk on its own. So people gathered in the field, and they were seeking these answers and looking for the way forward, that the incident have happened and then where to going forward. And then we went to the meeting, and this meeting was just about that. And then from there on, we left the meeting, and driving down the main road of Scenery Park, we saw a large crowd of young people rushing towards us, fuming, angry, and then we had to stop them and ask them, where are you guys heading to? They were saying that we are on our way to the owner of the tavern. We are on our way to Enyobeni to go and seek for answers, As they were going that way, heading towards the tavern, they got stopped by the police, and even their leaders, they came along and they calmed them down. And that's when they started mapping their way throughout the week, and we've seen candlelights that were taking place. We've seen prayers, wreath laying. It's been a very packed week in Scenery Park over this week. Minister of Police, Bekitele, wasted no time, arrived in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and he tried to calm down even people were very angry there as we were at the crime scene was still barricaded and people were trying even to force to get in there. So Minister tried to calm the people down. Eventually they listened to him. And people were told that but when the story broke, we're talking of 17 people who died. And then within a couple of hours, I think at around about 12, the number increased to 20. And by later in the day, we're talking of 21. So, Minister said that he first visited the crime scene. He went in there, and then he came out, and then he addressed the masses. And then from there on, he told them that I'm on my way to the mortuary, and I want to see those bodies myself, and I want to meet the families. That's when, the reality sank to us. It was my first time, to see. I know Minister Bekitele is a very strong man of strong courage and strong character. But on that day, when I saw the minister hearing his voice, so low, and it was difficult even to finish a sentence, talking about this incident that he never seen in his entire life. And he also said that I'm talking now as a parent. Even myself, I really felt the pain that I also have kids. And the minister, he said that the youngest of them all is 13. Here we're talking of teenagers between 13 and 17. Those are kids who died right there at Enyobeni Tavern without even said much. Let's hear at what the minister said further.
Firstly, the sight of those bodies sleeping there. But when you look at their faces, you realize that they're dealing with kids. You have heard the story that they are young, but when you see them, you realize that is a disaster. 21 of them, too many. 8 girls among them, 12 boys, youngest 13. Maybe for now, it will be good to speak as a parent and put aside other things. As I was driving from the scene to here, the president called me. He's in Germany, trying to find out what happened. I don't know. We can't certainly say what happened for now. I did ask the person who's leading the autopsy, Dr. Zondi, and he says they are collecting the information. Would not love to tell us what is the situation. One thing he confirms is that there is no natural death that has taken place. He confirms that the death is not natural.
So, Aviu Mtila, let me bring you into this conversation. From what Minister Begicele says there, we rule out any hint or suggestion that these were natural deaths. It would have been extraordinary in any case to have 21 young people in the same spot dying at the same time, and it's ruled to have been natural deaths. So it was anything but natural. But as we mark the 1 week anniversary of their deaths, we still are none the wiser as to what the exact cause is. And you've had the occasion to speak to a number of people, survivors. You've had the opportunity to walk through the crime scene itself, the Enyobeni Tavern, and go in there and see for yourself. You've heard the voices and the sounds of it all. I imagine that what you've heard in the last week or so will haunt you for a very long time.
Certainly will, Bratulas, not me only, but the Scenery Park community in its entirety. It's a community that's hurting, reeling from the pain of losing those 21 teenagers just a week ago, early hours of Sunday morning. In fact, it's a cloud of confusion, Bratulas, as to exactly what led to these deaths. There are many theories still currently at this moment, but of course, you heard the minister there suggesting that natural causes have already been ruled out. The other cause that might have been thought of at first that's also being ruled out is the possibility of a stampede. You do understand that hundreds, at least in speaking to some of these experts, suggesting that almost 300 people are said to have been at the Enyobeni Tavern, but as they try to comb through the scene itself, they've ruled out that it was a stampede, given that these teenagers, even in speaking to some of the people that were there inside, they were falling at their own accord, Bratulas. They weren't being pushed or anything of the sort. I remember one of the 7 teenagers that we spoke to suggesting that it was almost as if a button was being pushed and they were just randomly falling. That takes us then to what we've heard from experts, Bratulas, in terms of the possibility of it being chemical poisoning. In fact, they've ruled it out. Remember that pathological tests were done already on the Sunday, which were then taken by the South African Police Service at around noon on Monday, taken to Cape Town for further examining. But those pathological tests and autopsies have already revealed, as we were told confidentially, that in fact, this is chemical poisoning. But now, what was trying to be established in Cape Town at the toxicology lab there is the exact toxin then that led to the deaths of these 21 teenagers. It's quite confusing, Bratulas, as the parents also wanting those answers. They're saying that they are none the wiser as to exactly what led to the death of their teenagers. They're still seeking those answers, as we do understand the toxicology lab has said that it could possibly take some 2 weeks, maybe in another week now, given that we had that interview around last week, Tuesday. So maybe in the next coming week, we could be clearer in terms of what led to these deaths. But we've been speaking to these parents, Bratulas, as they were even visiting their children at the various mortuaries. We spoke to one, Yandi Swanguza, who lost her daughter there. Let's take a listen to what she had to say as she was at the mortuary.
We can't accept it. We are one of the poorest families. And as we are standing here right now, we need justice because we don't know what happened. We were just called just to attend to the scene, and now we're only here to identify the body. And the body is still here. We're taking the child to Afbov because of the mayor's offer, but we need justice. We need to know what happened to the child.
What are they telling you, Mama? Are you getting any answers?
At the moment, there are no answers. They said autopsy will be sent to the lab to find out what happened. But by the look of the child, she's got no visible injuries.
Aviwe, we'll return to you in a while for you to share some of those stories you've been hearing from survivors. But let me bring in Lakintimane, who is the convener of the Liquor Traders Association, into this conversation. And Mr. Ntimane, I don't know, part of where your organization features really is that this incident, tragic as it is, and people are looking for answers all over, part of the questions arise out of the fact that young people between the ages of 13 and 17 died at a tavern, a liquor trading establishment. This is a sentence that I shouldn't have to say, given how regulated the environment we have, the environment in which some of your members operate. So just broadly, as an overview from your side, I imagine that you've had this interest to also try and unravel, even as police investigations are happening and everyone is asking questions, you must have been keenly interested to find out what has been happening. Your sense of what happened at Enyobeni Tavern.
Thank you for the opportunity. This is a very difficult one to have to deal with. As a parent myself to two teenagers, it should not have happened. I never thought in a million years I will have to mention a 13-year-old in a tavern in one sentence. I woke up on that fateful Sunday and I received a message that at the time it was 22 kids that died at the tavern. I thought it was a joke. I immediately called the National Police Commissioner, General Fani Masimola, and he confirmed it. But I found it hard to believe that that could be the case. And then I called the Minister of Police, General Bekikele, and he did indeed confirm that we have a tragedy unfolding in the Eastern Cape at Enyobeni Tavern. But still, I didn't want to believe that we can have a 13-year-old. At that time, it was not yet established that there was a youngster of that age that could have perished in this wholly preventable tragedy. And it later transpired that indeed there was a 13-year-old, the oldest being 17 years old. It is unfathomable that this will be allowed to happen. And it brings to mind, an African proverb that says a child that is neglected by its village is going to burn the village down so that it can feel its warmth. We have seen that the tragedy that unfolded in Eastern Cape was not supposed to have happened. It is very tempting to point fingers as to what could have happened there. But I think we need to take a step back and come together as civil society, as communities, to try and find a way that will ensure that we prevent this tragedy from happening again. And we know that this is not an isolated incident in terms of underage drinking that took place in Eastern Cape. We know that there are taverns that are watching this right now that are continuing to sell alcohol to underage, that are continuing to put the profits ahead of the lives of our people. And it's got to stop. This incident needs to be a wake-up call to those liquor traders that continue to define the well-put regulations that are out there for us to observe. It cannot be that we now have to bury our future leaders in this way who perished at an environment where they were not supposed to be, in an environment where they were supposed to feel safe, because we know, having come from the villages, that growing up next to a tavern meant that you have an uncle who will look after you, meant that you have a father who will look after you. We have let down our kids that are now lying in a mortuary in our quest to make profits ahead of safeguarding their interest and safeguarding their future.
Right.
It is very painful.
All right, Lakintimane, let me thank you for those frank and open comments, opening comments in this discussion. You're watching today on eNCA. This is a special focus on the tragedy at Enyobeni Tavern in Scenery Park in East London. We continue with our discussion in just a moment, including bringing in Palisa Mokoane, who is a cluster manager at Soul City Institute, to reflect on some of these issues, socio-economic issues that have been thrown up by that tragedy.